Joining us now to talk about the week in politics are four top journalists. Colby Hamilton is from DNAinfo, Emily No is from Newsday, Annie Carney is from the New York Daily News, and joining us from our Washington, D.C. bureau, Michael Scotto of NY1. Thank you all for being here. And Michael, let me start with you. We spoke with Senator Schumer just a little while ago, and among other things, he said that the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, really kind of abdicated leadership, that it was a real failure of his leadership to stand up to the Tea Party elements in his conference. Is that the consensus down there?
That he failed to stand up to the Tea Party leadership?
Yes.
Sorry, I missed the first part of what you said.
Yes.
I think among moderates in the party, there is anger that he didn't stand up to the Tea Party. He kind of got pushed into this, and early on it seemed as if they would kind of put some type of companion resolution along with this spending bill, allowing the Tea Party to vote kind of symbolically to defund the Affordable Care Act, and they said, no way, we want something more binding than that. And he went along with it, and he got the moderates in the party to go along with it too, and as a result, there's now a lot of party infighting. There are a lot of meetings over the last few weeks of Republicans, and those meetings were not happy ones, where you had the conservatives wanting to stand pretty firm, and you had the moderates wanting to break away from a strategy that they thought was doomed from the very beginning.
And folks, here in New York City, our own Michael Grimm, I think, ended up on both sides of the issue, voted for the shutdown, and then voted to end the shutdown. So how does that play out for him politically?
Well, I don't think there's necessarily any repercussions for him in his seat. You know, he's got a pretty moderate base out in Staten Island as it is. It's not a big area for Tea Party activity. I mean, arguably the most out of the city in general. But I think in terms of his ability to play both sides, it's something that he's been able to do since he's been in there. He's been a moderate. You know, he fought for the Sandy money when we needed it for this city, and bucked the trend with the rest of the party when he was down in D.C. So for him, I think it's sort of a wash. It's a zero-sum game.
Michael Scotto, I understand from Senator Schumer that there's going to be almost a sequel to all of this come January, when the sequester cuts, the second round of sequester cuts, are supposed to hit. What's your sense of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the hope is, and no one knows that this will actually happen, is that they work this all out prior to January 15th, and that they work out a longer-term budget deal come middle of December, which is what they're supposed to do under the legislation, how it is written. I don't think there's going to be another government shutdown come January. I think you heard from Mitch McConnell yesterday saying that a shutdown is really off the table. He thinks that the shutdown has really taught members of the Tea Party a lesson, and he thinks it's also taught more of the moderates a lesson, too, that they can't really wage these fights, especially in the House, where the House, they're only, you know, a small part of governing in D.C., and then they can't really wage these fights when Democrats are in control of the Senate and the president is a Democrat in the White House.
Really, it was really striking here in the city that almost everybody running for any office, I mean, even in the controllers debate, they would try to beat up on their Republican opponents by accusing them of being members of the Tea Party and being part of the group that shut down the government. A lot of local impact from that national fight.
Those 16 days of the government shutdown have provided 16 days of attack fuel for Bill de Blasio and Joe Lhota. All he's been able to do, according to critics, is just defend himself and say that he's not that type of Republican. He's a New York Republican.
You know, and now what choice did he have, really, in the debate? Because he gets hit with it, and then he has to do something that you never really want to do in a debate, which is sound defensive and say, hey, I'm not part of that.
I don't know how much choice he did have. I mean, the experts that Newsday talked to said that the best he could do was defend himself, and that he defended himself well. But he spent a lot of precious time that he could have used to introduce himself, introduce his platform to voters. Really, just trying to steer the topic away from the negative tax. I'm sorry.
Well, and then of course this raises a larger question. I've been hearing some of this on conservative radio, where they say, look, he's running away from the Tea Party. Joe Lhota, running away from the Tea Party. He's got Rudy Giuliani in the witness protection program. We haven't seen him on the stump at all. He's saying in his ads that he agrees with de Blasio on hot-button social conservative issues, although he's the Conservative Party candidate. Does he risk kind of diluting the message and losing the base?
I think he does, because on primary night when he won, he said, you know, this is going to offer New Yorkers a stark difference in direction. And on some issues it really does, but the fact that he can't spend as much time talking about where the differences are and has to waste, he ran a commercial, a television ad, saying, you know, we're both pro-legalizing marijuana, we're both pro-gay marriage, we're very similar, and that is losing the message of two very different visions and a stark choice.
Yeah, I mean, and the strange thing, Colby, is he sounds like he's, you know, he's aggressive, right? I mean, what do you think of this ad? I mean, you know, he identified one issue. So in tone, he's saying, hey, we couldn't be more different. But then you start to parse it, and it's kind of like, well, they're different on the 91st Street transfer station, but that's a pretty narrow, in some ways, localized issue.
Well, being Mr. Nice Guy hasn't helped him, right? I mean, he's languishing in the polls. He's 40 to 50 points behind. I mean, I think there's a certain sense they realize that the tactic of staying even keel and presenting Joe Lhota as the, you know, sensible, reasonable guy who's not as extreme as his Democratic opponent wasn't going to work, and that to gain some sort of traction, to make some sort of statement in this race, he had to go negative and produce an ad that was going to sort of drop like a bomb in the middle of the race.
Very interesting.
I mean, this ad has caused a lot of controversy, and people said it was racist. I don't know, but one thing that I think it did do, no matter what you think of the content of it, is finally Lhota was driving the conversation, not just reacting and saying, like, either reacting and calling Bill de Blasio Sandinista or defending himself against the conservative labels. Finally, de Blasio was reacting to his ad, which I think, was that a first? I'm not sure. But,
but the ad itself caused a lot of trouble. I mean, when we picked apart the ad and took the images and contacted the photographers, they
That's right, you went through image by image.
Absolutely, yeah. My colleague Matthew Chase went through image by image. We contacted the photographers who took these pictures in the 80s and early 90s, and they had not been contacted by the Lhota campaign. They had not given their permission, and a lot of them weren't even Lhota supporters.
Copyright schmoppyright, right? It is an interesting sort of side issue. Stand by, folks. We're going to have more with these top reporters in just a moment. I'm going to ask them what stories they'll be following next week. And don't forget, if you want to get in on this conversation, you can do that on Twitter. We are at Errol Lewis or at Road to City.